Chapter 8. Gender and Communication. Male-female Conversation as Cross-Cultural Communication.
In the last lecture, you heard about the relationship between culture and classroom communication. In this lecture, I'll talk about another variable that affects human communication. That variable is gender. Gender is the social identity that men and women learn as they grow up in a culture. For example, boys learn to be masculine, and girls learn to be feminine as they grow to be men and women. Researchers have shown that men and women, and boys and girls for that matter, communicate in quite different ways and in different amounts depending on the situation the speakers find themselves in, and the reason or reasons they're communicating with other people. Many cultures actually encourage men and women to talk differently and in different amounts, and these patterns for communicating are learned when men and women are young boys and girls. Children learn how to talk to other children or adults and how to have conversations, not only from their parents, but also from their peers, other boys and girls their age. In her best-selling book, You Just Don't Understand, Deborah Tannen points out that although American boys and girls often play together, they spend most of their time playing in same-sex groups. She also points out that boys and girls do play some games together, but their favorite games are very often quite different. Tannen and other researchers on this topic have found that young boys, say ages 8 through 12, tend to play outside the home rather than in, and they play in large groups that are hierarchically structured. The group of boys generally has a leader who tells the other boys what to do and how to do it. It is by giving orders and making the other boys play by the rules that boys achieve higher and more dominant status in the play group. Boys also achieve status by taking center stage. They take center stage by talking a lot. They give orders and commands. They tell a lot of stories and jokes. They command attention by dominating conversations and by interrupting other boys who are speaking. The researchers also found that boys' games often have clear winners and losers and elaborate systems of rules. Researchers found that girls play different kinds of games and abide by different rules when playing their game. In addition, girls and groups use different patterns of communication and different styles of communication when playing together. Tannen and her colleagues have found that young girls often play in small groups or in pairs. They play less often in large groups or teams outside the home. Girls' play is not so hierarchically ordered as boys' play is. In their most frequent games, like hopscotch and jump rope, every girl gets a chance to play. In many of their play activities, such as playing house, there are no winners or losers. Researchers have also found that girls usually don't give many direct orders or commands to their playmates. They express their preferences as suggestions, according to Tannen. Girls often say to their playmates, "Let's do this or that." Boys, on the other hand, are more direct in ordering their playmates to do this or that. Tannen is quick to point out that North American boys, as well as girls, want to get their way and want other children to do what they want them to do. However, boys and girls try to get their playmates to do what they want them to do in different ways. Another well-known researcher, Marjorie Harness Goodwin, compared boys and girls engaged in two task-oriented activities. The boys were making slingshots in preparation for a fight. The girls were making jewelry. They were making rings for their fingers. Goodwin noted that the boys' activity group was hierarchically arranged. The leader told the other boys what to do and how to do it. The girls making the rings were more egalitarian. Everyone made suggestions about how to make the rings, and the girls tended to listen and accept the suggestions of the other girls in the group. Goodwin is not suggesting that girls never engage in some of the communication and management behaviors boys engage in. In fact, in another study, she found that when girls play house, the girl who plays the mother gives the orders to the girls who play the children. Girls seem to give orders to their peers less often than boys do when they play. The girls are practicing parent-child relationships in the game of playing house. It's very likely that when little boys play their games, they are also practicing the masculine roles they're expected to assume when they grow up. As a result of our cultural upbringing, we learn norms of behavior and patterns of communication that are often gender-based and sometimes gender-biased. We also develop stereotypes about how and how much males and females, that is, boys and girls or women and men, should and do communicate. However, researchers have shown that many of these stereotypes actually turn out to be quite wrong. A common stereotype that many people hold is the idea that women talk a lot, perhaps too much, and that they're always interrupting or trying to get center stage when someone else is talking. There is, in fact, a proverb that reinforces this idea. It states that foxes are all tail and women are all tongue. Actually, recent research on the influence of gender on communication has shown the exact opposite to be true in many instances. Researchers have found that men usually produce more talk than women and are more likely to interrupt another speaker than women will, particularly in public settings such as business meetings. So, although women are believed to talk more than men, study after study has shown that it is men who talk more at meetings, in mixed group discussions, and in classrooms where girls or young women sit next to boys or young men. And this finding holds even for communicative interactions between very educated and successful professional men and women, such as professors, for example. Deborah Tannen, in her book, You Just Don't Understand, cites a study conducted by Barbara and Jean Eakins, who tape recorded and studied 7 university faculty meetings. They found that, with one exception, men professors spoke more often and without exception for a longer period of time than women professors did. The men took center stage and talked from 10.66 seconds to 17.07 seconds, while the women talked from 3 to 10 seconds on the average. Tannen points out that the women's longest turns were still shorter than the men's shortest turns. Angela Simeone reports another example of this phenomenon in her book, Academic Women. She found that women professors talk at departmental meetings less often than their male colleagues do. When asked how often they spoke at departmental meetings, 46% of the American men professors reported that they spoke often at these meetings, but only 15% of the women professors reported that they spoke often at departmental meetings. Perhaps it is our social concept of what is feminine and what is masculine that reinforces the stereotype that women talk more than men, and even causes these different patterns of communication. Maybe a woman is labeled talkative or is criticized for interrupting if she does these things at all, because our culture, as well as many cultures, teaches that women should be quiet if they want to be feminine. Perhaps masculine culture encourages boys and men to dominate, talk, and interrupt more often. And males who talk a lot and interrupt are often not criticized for doing so. These differences in the patterns of communication and styles of communicating are studied by researchers who study the effects of gender on communication. They study these effects in order to understand why misunderstandings occur between men and women in conversation. Often it's because their styles and patterns of conversation are so different. It is important that we learn to recognize these differences so that we can learn to communicate better with people of other gender. It is important to emphasize that these differences may be specific to North American culture. Gender can affect communication in even more and stronger ways in some other cultures. In Zulu culture, for example, a wife is forbidden to say any words that sound like the names of her father-in-law or brothers. This means she must paraphrase these words, and she's expected to do so. So you see, cultural differences are not the only things that affect language and communication. Language is affected by gender as well. I'm sure you can think of many ways that gender affects communication between men and women in your own culture.